Winning economist, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who has written a new book, The Price of Inequality, in which he argues that an increasingly divided society is endangering our future. But first, Peter Altmaier is Germany's Federal Minister for the Environment and joins us now from Berlin. Mr. Altmaier, Angela Merkel has been very consistent over the years, but that consistency has brought us 3 years of summits with the euro repeatedly on collapse. So what's going to be different this time?
Well, we have accepted a number of proposals from our European partners over the last 2.5 years. We have created huge rescue operations and funds. German taxpayers' money is involved at a scale of several hundred billion euros. We have now been ready to accept a growth package that is financed by European taxpayers' money. But we have to insist at the same time that something is also done and implemented on a national level in these countries in order to restore the confidence of international financial markets.
Right. I think people will understand Angela Merkel's political problems, how she has to convince German voters and taxpayers. However, you are isolated. You know, debt mutualization is supported by the Council President, the Commission President, the Spanish Prime Minister, the French President, the Italian Prime Minister. They're all wrong, are they?
No, they're not wrong, but this is the normal kind of procedure in European summits. I can remember over the last 2.5 years several summits where it seemed to be the case that we would be isolated, but at the end of the day, we were able to organize an enormous and large consensus. That happened last year in November when all countries agreed on the German-French proposals and just 2 countries stayed away, the UK and the Czech Republic. So I'm basically optimistic this summit can become a success story. We are on the first day and we will have very, very tough talks and negotiations, but it can lead us to a consensus.
Okay, but Frau Merkel is talking of others offering eyewash and fake solutions, but the German solution over the 2.5 years of constructive talks that you've talked about has got us to a state where Greece is ruined, Italy and Spain find it very difficult to borrow, and democracy itself is under threat in some of those countries.
Well, I would say that in Greece we have seen a national parliament election where reasonable pro-European parties have made it. We have seen in Spain and Italy but she didn't win. She lost. She nearly won, but she lost, as a matter of fact. And in Italy and Spain, we have governments really interested in achieving progress. So I'm basically optimistic. And if we can manage tonight and tomorrow to come to conclusions about growth, about the long-term reforms of the European Union, I'm optimistic that we can convince markets to restore confidence and trust in countries like Spain. And we have made it clear, if Spain would apply for money under the fund, we would be prepared to consider that.
Okay, let me bring in Joe Stiglitz here. I mean, you have also been very consistent in what you've written about austerity. You've said it's effectively suicidal. I mean, wouldn't you accept that Angela Merkel's position, if she were to say, let's just give a lot of money to southern European economies which we don't think have been run very well, that would be suicidal?
Well, part of the problem here is the diagnosis of the underlying problem. Spain and Ireland had a surplus before the crisis. They have a deficit because Europe is in recession. It's the recession that caused the deficit, not the other way around. And if you begin with the wrong diagnosis, you're going to get the wrong prescription. And Germany's been giving them the wrong prescription. The German prescriptions over the last 3 years have led to a depression in Spain. 1 out of 2 Spanish people are out of work. They want to work, of the young people. The unemployment rate has gotten consistently higher, and it's now approaching 1 out of 4. So those prescriptions have not worked. The case of Greece, they say they're too slow in reform. #1 in the OECD in reforms. Yeah, you can't do everything overnight in a democracy, but they've done an awful lot. #1 in reform.
Okay, let me bring in Peter Altmaier on that. That austerity may be right for a very healthy economy like Germany, but it's been terrible for Spain and Greece.
Well, we have agreed on a growth package, and this is on the agenda today and tomorrow. First thing. Second thing, increase. Some reforms have been implemented, and for the first time we see some interesting signs of a growing economy again. And as far as Spain is concerned,
decrease of several percentage this year.
Well, it depends. It depends on the month you are considering, and we have the impression the Greek economy is starting to recover. And in Spain, we have to admit, it is just a couple of months since the new Prime Minister took over, and he has then introduced a number of reforms. It's probably much too early to see a real effect of these reforms. What we have to provide is solidarity. We made clear we want to preserve the euro as a common currency for all 17 member states. What we made clear is Germany is prepared to encourage growth by spending more.
Right.
And what we have made clear is that all countries have to undergo reforms.
Well, Joe Stiglitz, I mean, you know, if you were talking to the German taxpayer tonight, who's funding all this, I mean, what's in it for them? Why should they do this without the austerity, without the reforms,
because
without the changes?
Because the cost of the breakup of the euro for Germany is very, very high. And the fact is, let's talk about the growth part. And I agree, everybody agrees that you need growth. They agreed on that last July, a year ago. Nothing happened. What about the agreement that they're talking about right now? $150 billion or so. Most of that is old money repackaged. I know the political, you know...
Right, not unknown in our country either, to repackage and re-announce things.
Exactly.
But
my understanding is about 10 billion of that is really new money.
But is part of your point that Germany has benefited, and everybody agrees, from being in the euro? You're writing about inequality in all kinds of ways. Does Germany have a kind of moral duty, therefore, to try to end some of this inequality by spreading the money around? Is that what you're saying, fundamentally?
I think it's in their self-interest, if they could understand their enlightened self-interest, rather than the short-sighted self-interest. So I think it's in their long-term self-interest to do this. I do think there's a sense of solidarity, and by solidarity, I don't mean tying your heads together as you go over the cliff, a suicide pact. I mean solidarity helping some countries that are having difficulty because of a global downturn caused by the United States.
Let me bring in Peter Altmaier on that, it would be in your own self-interest to spread some more money around. It's not just an act of charity.
No, indeed, I wholeheartedly agree. We are interested in preserving the euro. We are interested in providing solidarity to the other countries. But if it is true that the crisis is the result of the fact that we have spent too much money over too many years, then we cannot cure that crisis by spending even more money. That does not exist.
That was where you came in this conversation.
That's right. I said that's the fundamental misdiagnosis.
Can I just move on to one specific point? You heard our discussion earlier about Barclays Bank and this culture of greed which has infected the banks and so on. I mean, what do you make of that? Are you at all surprised that some people were fiddling the LIBOR rate and so on?
No, I knew about that earlier. I mean, so to me this was no surprise. It's very consistent with the pattern of behavior that we've seen in banks all over the world. In my book, I talk about it as moral deprivation. It wasn't quite as good as the word that you used, the sewer of...
the sewer of something. But so do you think that they live in some kind of different moral universe from the rest of us?
Yeah, I think they do. But it's partly a result of a culture and a set of incentives that have been provided for them. The incentives to you know, a culture of greed and a framework that allowed them to get away with it.
But can I put, you know, you will have heard this argument repeatedly in the United States by conservative economists who say, look, it's not a culture of greed so much as a culture of aspiration. It's good that people are unequal because then people at the bottom aspire to get to the top. That's how the United States economy has grown for 200 years. That's the argument.
Yeah, and the problem that this Barclays scandal brings out so clearly is that a lot of what was going on is what I call rent-seeking. In other words, it wasn't creating more wealth. It was manipulating the rules of the game to steal somebody else's money.
Right, so it wasn't growing the pot.
It wasn't growing the pot. It was getting a larger share of the pot. And in doing that, weakening the economy. And this is a really important point. the kind of thing that they do weakens the economy. And so that's why I've been arguing that we could have a stronger economy, more growth, with more equality.
Right, and just as we round up our conversation, Mr. Altmaier, you know, we've got 17 countries in the Eurozone right now. Do you think in 5 years' time there's still going to be 17 countries in the Eurozone?
I would say 17 countries or even more.
You think it will become so popular that people will be clamoring to join the Eurozone rather than get out of it?
There are many countries interested in joining the Eurozone, and it is my prediction that the Euro has been stabilized over the last couple of days, not destabilized. Greece is now a reliable partner, and in Spain and in Italy we have just to cope with spreads and interest rates, but basically these are sound economies and we can overcome that crisis.
Professor Stiglitz?
They would be sound economies if the policies of austerity were not being imposed on them, if there was a real commitment to growth, which would require a European solidarity fund for stabilization, if there were a guaranteed fund for all the banks, because without that, money is going to flow from these countries to Germany, which has, in effect, because the German government is backing the German banks as an implicit subsidy to the German banks, an unlevel playing field. If you really address the fundamental problems, then the strengths of European countries are very strong.
But do you think, you know, we see every day the politicians in Europe, and we'll hear it again tomorrow, this is a political project, we're committed to it, the answer is more Europe. We will hear all of that. So is that encouraging to you, given that the economics are not quite going in the way you've described?
I've heard them saying that for a long time, and I haven't yet heard, particularly from Germany, the kind of solidarity, the kind of real agreement on, and an understanding of really the basic of what needs to be done. And it's not that complicated from an economic point of view. If you have a single market, if you have money that can flow easily around that single market, you have to have a single banking system, single guarantee, and a single regulator. I agree with you. You need to have a framework that works. Okay. You need a solidarity fund for growth, a single one.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Professor Stiglitz, Peter Altmaier, thank you very much. Now, the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is